the Examining NFL DraftKings Cafe Value for Week 4. I'm Jason Gilbo, J Gilbo 11. With me is Russell Clay at Russell J Clay. Russell took a look at each position here, breaking down the top 3 Cafe Value guys at each spot. Overall, how do you feel about just kind of how things shook up?
Well, Jason, I've been watching a little Mad Men of late, and it's really changed a lot of things for me. And this week's all about Zach Miller. Honestly, that's my takeaway from looking at the slate. That's my takeaway from he's got the highest cafe value on the year so far of any player. So that's my main takeaway from everything. But I guess you probably want to get into some quarterbacks here.
I do. I mean, I see 2 that I like and one that I have a tough time probably deploying.
Yeah, I'm not doing Jameis Winston. That is the highest cafe value on the slate, probably because he leads the league in pass attempts and is leading the league in touchdowns as well. That could be a good reason why. But against this Denver defense, I don't even think volume can really save you, honestly, most weeks, even though he does have that elite deep threat in Mike Evans and, Adam Humphries doing stuff, in the dump off situation. But yeah, I this is just a fade for me. I get the Vegas line, they are still projected for 20, even though that's not great. It should still bring something for Winston at 54, but I'm not touching him either way. I don't care.
Yeah, I think the 5,400 price tag is kind of why he pops up there. And really, I mean, when you have Brian Hoyer right there, it doesn't really make much sense to kind of go that way.
Yeah.
So
Brian Hoyer's my guy there for sure. As far as Cam Newton and Drew Brees go, I'm actually not looking at Drew Brees as much as Cam Newton. I think we look at Cam at home, or not at home, but against the Falcons team that is basically like a home game. This is going to get ugly for this Falcons defense that can't really stop the run. There's no Jonathan Stewart to really rely on in the running game. So I think Cam's going to really take a lot of responsibility in the red zone. Greg Olsen's a great stacking option. I think we can look to stack Kelvin. While Desmond Trufant's a great cover corner, I think Kelvin is still a mismatch issue. So I like that quite a bit. Drew Brees' home road splits are enough for me to not get as much exposure as everyone else, pretty much. I'll get exposure to Fleener. I'll get exposure to Ingram and Michael Thomas as well, but that's going to be my exposure to Brees this week.
yeah, I'm definitely with you. I think Brees is, he hits on about maybe 1 or 2 road games a year, and you got to be on the right ones if you want to get the advantage. I don't mind him in GPPs for that reason.
I mean, I'm fine with him. I just think for 200 more, I'm going Cam every time pretty much, unless I'm going contrarian or building a stacking Saints situation or game stack.
Yeah, definitely. Running backs here, it turned out 3 really value options, and no real surprise to me for 2 of these guys. Jordan Howard, Carlos Hyde, both you talked about already this week in terms of running backs. And at those prices, it's kind of hard to fade, especially Hyde.
Oh boy, smoking's really taking a toll on me in the last 3 minutes. Jordan Howard, 3,700. I get that people like that option with a Jeremy Langford out. I'm not as in on him as most people. I think Carlos Hyde, the other one listed here as the second option, I think is a much, much better guarantee in terms of workload against, a relatively weak Dallas front. I don't mind going at the Lions defense, but I think you're better off with Kevin White and Zach Miller on this site. Howard's a fine option on this slate, but I feel similar to him as I did to Jerick McKinnon last week, where it's like, yeah, it's a good price, but I don't know what I'm getting. And the difference between him and McKinnon is he's really not a good athlete. So those explosive plays aren't necessarily going to be there. I get that he had that big run, which looks nice, but it was really just one perfectly blocked play that was kind of, not a great defensive play by them. And then the rest of his runs really didn't go for anything last week. So not too enthused about that. Carlos Hyde coming off, 2 top 5 weeks in the first 3. We're looking at more red zone carries. We're looking at Chip Kelly wanting to run the ball. If you didn't listen to the game breakdown with me and Eric Mack, he talks about how, in the shotgun, they're looking how teams are playing them and potentially, audibling into runs. And that's why Hyde's getting so many runs at certain parts in the game. Last week, we saw that against Seattle where, they were just playing prevent in the fourth quarter, and a rare occasion where game flow actually helped the running back. So YOLO with Carlos Hyde at this stage. Even though he's not a passing down guy, I don't care.
Yeah, definitely. I think the workload, it was nice to see. And the fact that DraftKings continuously prices him down at 4,200, I mean, it just makes sense to use him. Duke Johnson comes up here, 4K. Both him and Corolla are expected to play, but both are questionable. Kind of an interesting move here. I don't hate it because it's going to be super low owned, and I always think Johnson has that big upside. And this Washington defense, I do like him this week, but they've been far from what I expected them to be this year.
Duke Johnson, that would have been a great character on Mad Men. Like, that's a great name. But anyway, 4K. I think we're sleeping on the Browns a little bit in terms of this matchup. Not necessarily Terrell Pryor. I think the word's out on him, but just generally speaking, Crowell and Duke Johnson are probably going to go under-owned this week. They have actually a pretty decent matchup, and I think a lot more people are going to be on this Redskins team. If you're doing a game stack, I would definitely look at Duke Johnson with, Kirk Cousins and Jordan Reed. I think that's a nice correlation play there. As far as the rest, though, I think I'm really looking at Hyde in that range, and pretty much, unless I'm going contrarian with Duke Johnson, I think I'm all done.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Jumping into wide receiver here, so I was a little surprised Terrell Pryor didn't pop up with the cafe value, but I think he's obviously going to be a pretty obvious one. Looking at 3 other guys, really outside of Thomas, a lot of kind of PPR king type receivers.
I look at Adam Humphries as an intriguing play in what's perceived as a bad matchup. And for the team, it is. But if Denver's just totally shutting down the deep plays, who are the passes going to go to? Cameron Brate's there, but he's not a guy that's you want to get, 10 targets in a game. That's going to go to Humphries. He's going to continue to get those dump offs. He's min price. This is who I'm looking to get exposure from in that Tampa offense this week. I don't see anyone else as really viable whatsoever. So Humphries, I like. As far as Cole Beasley and Michael Thomas, I like Thomas if we're, debating who to take there, but I think they're both viable. Obviously, cafe value over 18 is a good sign. So certainly intriguing from a value perspective. In terms of ceiling, though, I think Thomas has a much higher chance at a touchdown, especially if Willie Snead's out. If Willie Snead is in, I lean Beasley here. So just keep an eye on, who's active on game day.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. And these are intriguing options. I think in terms of kind of getting those big guys in, if you want to get a Bell or David Johnson or Antonio Brown, you might be needed to kind of dig down at that third wide receiver spot or flex or however you want to go about it. And these guys, I think, are the ones that we can really look at.
Certainly. And now we get to it, baby. Let's go. Zach Miller week, folks. I was excited about it. To begin the week, cafe value pops out, our projections pop out, 4for4's projections pop out. You just look at this, it's just beautiful. Mwah. And the best part is he's not a big name. So while I think he'll have ownership, I don't think it's going to be that 40% play, especially with Reed, especially, with Hunter Henry there, who I also like quite a bit, especially with Pitta, especially with Kyle Rudolph, especially with tight ends doing well, generally speaking. I think this is just tremendous. I'm going to try to get him in all lineups. If I'm getting Hunter Henry exposure, I'm going to be trying to get Zach Miller in my flex. I just think this is I don't even think you really have to um dive that deep in to know, okay, this guy's going to get 8 to 10 targets. He's 2,700. He only needs really 10 to 12 points to hit value. He has over 20-point DK upside. He has a ceiling of over 100 receiving yards. I just think it's automatic.
Yeah, I definitely think so as well. Quite the deep week for tight ends, especially in the value. And these guys here, I mean, I think Dennis Pitta's price tag at 3,900 is a little high for me. Just because I think if I am going to swerve, it's probably going to be for Fleener, who's cheaper than Pitta this week. Um, I don't know. I think last week we looked at Pitta as kind of a nice value. This week, 3,900, even though it's still cheap, I just feel like I kind of rather go elsewhere.
I don't I haven't felt this way in a long time, but I don't know how I'm gonna get off him, honestly. Cause like the guys you can fit in, so say you go with a Fleener, that's great. And then if you go with Miller in your flex, like you can get Brown, Hopkins, Bell, David Johnson. Like you can get all four. And I mean that's probably gonna be chalky, but for cash, that's what I'm doing. So also Hunter Henry, he's a tremendous value as well. We just don't have the sample size. Love the talent, love the athletic profile. Second round pick, almost a first rounder for the Chargers. Antonio Gates out this week. Phillip Rivers is in desperate need of a dump off option. Tyrell Williams is an athletic freak, but he's more the, you know, uh, 5 targets. He takes one for a 50-yard touchdown. He's not really a safety valve, Dontrell Inman kind of is in that role, but you want those targets going to Hunter Henry. I think Phillip Rivers knows that. Melvin Gordon's going to get his. Travis Benjamin can move sort of more to those deep targets if Henry is, in fact, that dump off option. So I think Henry, not only long term, but this week is very intriguing.
Yeah, I definitely do too. Moving into the defenses here, and really cheap seems to be the option. Overall, in terms of the group, I don't know. I mean, I feel like the optimizer has been tossing out, the Chiefs. They tossed out the Chargers against Jacksonville. They've been rolling out a lot of teams here that have had some success. So it's not like I can knock these plays, but they're probably not the first 3 that I'm looking at.
I love the Ravens, actually. I think they're a cash option. But yeah, this is nice to have the optimizer behind us on that one. Chargers isn't one I would have thought of, but I mean, when you look at Breeze and his home away splits, maybe they are viable. Obviously, that secondary is tremendous. I mean, every week it seems like we're bumping them up a few more points and really downgrading the pass catchers. So, I mean, I'm certainly interested in them at 2,300. And Steelers, yeah. I mean, I like Macklin, so I don't know how much Steelers I'm going to have, but they are interesting.
They are. I mean, back at home, Kansas City's offense, they're one. Alex Smith doesn't turn the ball over a ton. I just don't, in terms of upside, I don't see a ton of it being there. But overall, I think as kind of a decent floor, it might be. You just kind of hope. I like Macklin as well. Jamal Charles is coming back this week. I don't know. I think I just kind of rather go with other options.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I do like the pay ups quite a bit as well. And with the values we've talked about, I think it's pretty easy to pay up and feel pretty comfortable in cash. These are probably more tournament options.
Yeah, definitely. That's going to wrap things up with the DraftKings Cafe value for week 4. Be sure to head on over to dailyfantasycafe.com and check out all our great tools and content.